Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Mr. Fincham's Fireside Follow-Alongs. Today we are going to continue on with Pedro's journal. We are going to start where we left off on page 74, and we will be going to page 80. So I'll give you guys a moment to flip open to that if you have your hard copies of your text collection. Just to kind of recap on what we read yesterday. We learned that Pedro was hired by the captain, right, to come along with him on his journey. And the reason he was hired was because he could read and write. And the captain thinks that is going to be important. They want to document what goes on. They want somebody almost like a reporter to be there to keep tally of where they go, how far they go, and just the day-to-day ins and outs of their exploration. Now, speaking of keeping tally, we learned something yesterday about the captain, that he may be kind of bending the truth, right? He's telling the crew that they have traveled this amount of miles, but then he's writing in the official log a different amount. We think that he's doing this so that way the crew will think that they are closer to returning home than they actually are. Maybe that's to keep their spirits up. I don't know. But he is misleading them. So, from Pedro, we found out that he has been lying to the crew. Another thing that we found out was that he is offering, let me flip back to the last page here to 73. Was it 100,000? 10,000 maravedis. So I looked up what a maravetti actually was. I was trying to find out exactly how much it's worth. I couldn't really find that, but I did find that it was, there's different coins. It's basically a silver coin or a gold coin. And they were used between the 11th and the 14th century mostly. Some said up to the 17th century even. Were they still valuable? So it's basically, you can think of it like a dollar. It's not worth a dollar, but that's how I'm going to have you guys think about it for the sake of the story. So he's offering 10,000 maravedis to the first person who can spot shore. Again, he's maybe doing this, I don't know, but maybe he's doing this to keep the spirits of the crew up. If you're the captain of a ship and your crew is sad and angry and depressed and wants to get home and wants to get back on land, is that good for your expedition? Is that good for you exploring? Probably not. You want a happy, motivated, enthusiastic crew to help you explore, right? So I think at this point the captain is doing everything he can to keep the crew in good spirits, and we're going to have to see whether or not him doing that is working. So we are going to start on page 74. The questions that we're going to be addressing today are here. So here's the first two on your ELA questions and tasks. And the first one is, on page 74, Pedro says the air was thick with mutiny and betrayal. What does this figure of speech mean? Why might the author have used this technique to describe the air? So, again, we run into that word mutiny. For those of you who don't remember, a mutiny is when a crew basically takes over a ship from the captain. They take the ship over. So they betray the captain and they take it over. So why does the author use this technique to describe the air? What does this figure of speech mean? And the second question. Imagine you're on a ship and the men start talking about mutiny, wanting to take over the ship. Would you side with the men or with Columbus? Why? So if you're a crew member and the other crew members start talking about mutiny, would you side with the captain or would you side with the men? Tell me why. These questions will be easier to answer after we do our reading. So without further ado, we are going to begin on page 74, Pedro's journal.
October 10th.
So October 10th, this is about a month or so after the last entry from Pedro. So here we go. This has been the worst day of all for the captain. I am certain of this. We have doubled all previous records of days and leagues at sea, and we've gone way past the point where he originally said we would find land. There is nothing out here. Surely we are lost, and everyone is certain now as well. This morning the men responded slowly to orders, scowling and slamming down their tools and lines. They whispered in pairs of small groups on deck and below. The air was thick with mutiny and betrayal, until finally everything came to a dead stop. The wind howled through the shrouds, and the men just stood there on deck and did not move aside when Columbus came. "Enough," one of the men said to his face. "This is enough. Now we turn back." The other men grumbled their assent and nodded. Their fists clenched, their chests broad, and they remained motionless and unmoved while Columbus paced the deck, telling them how close he figured we must be, that land could be right over the next horizon. He told them again of the fame and fortune that would be theirs if they only could last a little longer. And they laughed at him, the cruel laughter of impatient and deafened men. "All that aside," he added, "with the fresh easterly wind coming at us on the rising sea, we can't turn a course back to Spain right now. We would stand still in the water." I looked up at the sails, full and straining, taking us farther and farther from Spain. What if a westerly wind never came? What if we were just blown away forever and ever? "Let me offer you this," Columbus finally said. "Do me this favor. Stay with me this day and night, and if I don't bring you to land before day, cut off my head, and you shall return." The men glanced at each other. Some nodded. "One day," they said. "One day, and then we turn around. That is all I ask," Columbus said. So they've been at it for a few months now, and they are way past the point where Christopher Columbus said that they would find land, right? So the crew is like, "Look, you said we'd find land. We haven't found it yet. We think we're lost. Turn us around now, or we'll do it ourselves." And Christopher Columbus kind of persuades them to let them give him one more day. So page 75, here's Pedro. "Later, when I went down to the cabin with the log, the captain's door was bolted shut, and when I knocked, he didn't answer. So I sat outside the door with the heavy journal in my lap and waited." All right, so now we're on page 76. October 11th. "Through the day that was to have been our last day traveling westward, many things were seen floating in the water, things that stirred everyone's hopes and had men once again scanning the horizon. We saw birds in flocks, reeds and plants floating in the water, and a small floating board, and even a stick was recovered that had iron workings on it, obviously man-made. Suddenly, no one wished to turn around. There was no further word on it. So they see birds. Why might birds be a good sign at sea? Because if you see birds, then you know that land can't be that far away, right? So we're going to start here on the last paragraph. "At sunset, I led the prayers, and the men sang, 'Salve Regina.' Then the captain spoke to the seamen from the stern castle, doubling the night watch and urging everyone to keep a sharp lookout. No one asked about turning back. Then the captain added a new bonus to his reward of 10,000 maravedis. He added a silk doublet, and some of the men joked with each other. Next, the captain nodded to me, and I sang for the changing of the watch, but my words were lost in the wind that was growing brisker and in the seas that were growing heavier and sounding like breakers all about us. The men dispersed to their watches and their bunks, and the captain paced the deck. I don't know why, but this night I stayed with him. I stayed still by the gunwale, watching over the side. Once in a while he would stand beside me, silent, looking westward, always westward." So when it says that they are going towards their, what was the word I'm looking for here? Breakers. Oh, when they were going to their watch, the changing of the watch, it doesn't mean like a watch you wear on your wrist. It means like a shift. So some men would work at night, some would work in the mornings. So when they're headed to your watch, it means you're headed to your shift. And we are going to go on to page 77. Then, an hour before moonrise, the captain froze beside me. "Gutierrez!" he called to one of the king's men on board, who came running. He pointed out across the water. "What do you see?" Gutierrez peered into the west. "I don't see anything. he said. What do you see?" "Can't you see it?" the captain whispered. "The light? Like a little wax candle rising and falling." The man at his side was quiet. I was there beside him, too, straining my own eyes to the dark horizon. Suddenly, another seaman called out across the darkness, "Land! Land!" "He's already seen it," I shouted. "My master's already seen it." And the captain laughed and tousled my hair. "Tierra! Tierra!" It was heard all across the water from all three ships. I am below now in the captain's cabin writing, while in the light of the rising moon, with our sails silver in the moonlight, that we three exploring ships are rolled and plunging through the swells towards land. Tomorrow our feet will touch soil, and I can assure my dear mother in the hills of Spain that no one will get much sleep on board the Santa Maria tonight. So they finally are able to see land. It must be pretty scary when you are in the middle of the ocean, and no matter what direction you look in, all you see is water, right? It must be kind of scary. You don't know where the land is going to come, because remember, all they have to do is listen to their captain. If the captain says, "We're going to see land in 10 days, and 14 days goes by and there's no land," you might question him too. But they're in luck because they finally see land. So they know it's only going to be another day or two until they reach it, right? Now we are going on to page 78.
October 12th.
So October 12th. A lush green island was there in the morning, and our three ships approached it carefully, maneuvering through breakers and a threatening barrier reef. We could see clear down to the reef and the sparkling blue waters as we sailed through, and it is truly land, truly earth, here so far from Spain. The Santa Maria led the way into the sheltered bay of the island and got a mark of only 5 fathoms deep. We anchored there and barely paused to admire the breathtaking beauty. Small boats were prepared, armed and lowered, and in these some of us went ashore. Out of respect, all waited while Christopher Columbus leaped out of the boat, his feet the first to touch this new land. I wondered what my mother would say if she knew her son had lost the 10,000 maravedis to the captain, who claimed it for himself. So, again, they finally make land. They've been traveling west, west, west. If you guys look at a map, and you guys can find Spain, if you continue traveling west over the Atlantic Ocean, you are eventually going to reach North America. And it sounds like this is what they did. Now, in the first sentence up here, it says that the barrier reef was threatening. So they approached it carefully, maneuvering through breakers and a threatening barrier reef. Why might the barrier reef be threatening? Maybe because of its size. They are big, right? But also because if the water is too shallow and you run your boat over the barrier reefs, the boat is going to break. Barrier reefs are extremely hard. They're kind of like rocks almost. They're not rocks, but they're extremely hard. So you could damage your boat a lot. So you got to be careful not going too close to land when you find it, because if you go too close, your ship could be damaged, or it could get caught up on very shallow water, and you may not be able to get the boat back out into the open water. So anchoring your boat offshore and going onto the land on smaller boats is the right way. You don't just bring your boat up and park on land, right? It's kind of dangerous. So, and here's a picture of them stepping foot ashore, Pedro and Christopher Columbus. And we're going to go to page 79. The captain carried the royal banner of our king and queen, and as everyone else scrambled out of the boats and secured them in the white sand, he thrust the banner into the earth and sank down to his knees and said a prayer of thanksgiving for our safe arrival in India. Others dropped to their knees around him. Diego was beside me, and he clapped his hand on my shoulder. I knew he was happy to be on land again. I was, too, although I had been at sea so long that even on land, the ground seems to buckle and sway beneath my feet. So what he's saying here is he was excited to be on land too, but he's been on the ship so long that he even feels like the ground is kind of shaking and swaying the way that it would on a boat, right? And I want you guys to remember, on the previous page, I said that if you start from Spain and head west, you would land in North America, right? He didn't know North America was a thing yet. He thought he was going to India, which is actually east of Spain. So he was trying to go all the way around the world to land in India. So he wasn't exactly sure where he even was yet. So here we're going to start on the second paragraph. The captain made a solemn ceremony and formally took possession of the land for the king and queen, naming it San Salvador. We all witnessed this, and then little by little we noticed something else. There were people stepping out from the trees, beautiful, strong, naked people with tanned skin and straight black hair. My mother would have lowered her eyes or looked away, as I have seen her do in our home when someone dresses, but I could not take my eyes off them. Some had boldly painted their bodies or their faces, some only their eyes, some their noses. They were so beautiful and gentle. They walked towards us slowly, but without fear, smiling and reaching out their hands. So they land on the shore, right? They plant the flag. They claim it for Spain. They're saying, hey, we discovered this. This now belongs to Spain. In earlier readings, you guys answered, should explorers be able to do that? It is pretty obvious that there was already people here before them, right? They're coming out of the woods. So does this land belong to the people who are coming out of the woods? Or does it belong to Spain? I don't know. And we're going to go on to the final page for today, page 80. The sailors watched them in wonder, and when these people came near, the crew gave them coins, little red caps, whatever they had in their pockets. Columbus himself showed one native his sword, and the native, never having seen such an instrument before, slid his fingers along the sharp edge and looked startled at his fingers that dripped blood into the sand. Everyone was smiling and so friendly. Close up, we could see how clear and gentle their eyes were, how broad and unusual their foreheads. The captain especially noted and said to one of his men, "See the gold in that one's nose? See how docile they are? They will be easy. We can take 6 back with us to Spain." I look at this too. My mother would have lowered her eyes. So they meet these people. These people are friendly. And they notice that they have gold jewelry. Some of you told me in previous writings that a reason for exploring is to find riches, to find fortune. Well, it seems like they found it. See the gold in that one's nose? See how docile they are? Docile just means calm, unthreatening, not dangerous. So it sounds like they may be interested in taking advantage of these poor people, right? We don't know yet, but if you're commenting on the gold that the person has and how docile they are, and then you're saying they will be easy, we will take 6 back with us to Spain, it doesn't sound like some of the crew members have very positive things in store for these people that they just made, or these people that they just met, right? All right, here's the next entry from Pedro, October 16th. So much has happened. There is so much to remember and record, and so much I do not think I want to tell my mother. Perhaps I will keep these letters to myself after all. The natives think we are angels from God. They swim out to us, wave, throw themselves in the sand, hold their hands and faces to the sky, and sing and call to us. The crew loves it, and no one loves it better than Columbus. He lifts his open palms to them like a priest at Mass. I sometimes wonder if he doesn't believe these natives himself just a little bit. Last paragraph. They come right out of the ship in swift dugouts that sit 40 men, and sometimes as they approach us, the dugout tips. But in minutes, they right it, and they begin bailing it out and with hollow gourds. All day long, the Indians row out to see us, bringing gifts of cotton thread, shell-tipped spears, and even brightly colored parrots that sit on our shoulders and cry out in human voices. For their trouble, we give them worthless beads, bells, and tastes of honey, which they marvel at. Now, if you remember, marvel means to stare at something in awe, to be amazed by it. So the people, notice they're called Indians. That's because Christopher Columbus and his crew right now believe they are in India, which they're not. They're not in India. They're in North America. The Indians, we'll call them for now, are bringing gifts, giving them spears, parrots, and what do they give them in return? Worthless beads, bells, and honey, right? So they can't really talk. They don't speak the same language. So they're communicating as best they can through gift giving and hand gestures, right? And we are going to stop there today for Pedro's journal. Before we close out for the day, I'm just going to recap the questions for you guys. The first one, and I'll go back to this page as well so you guys can see it. On page 74, Pedro says the air was thick with mutiny and betrayal. What does this figure of speech mean? Why might the author have used this technique to describe the air? And the second question. Imagine you are on a ship and the men start talking about mutiny, wanting to take over the ship. Would you side with the men or would you side with Columbus? Why? And there is an extension question here. What evidence shows how the characters respond to challenges? So the challenge was kind of, I would say one of the challenges is not going crazy on the ship. You're trapped at sea. It might be challenging to trust the captain. How do the characters respond to those challenges? And that is going to be it for us today. Thank you guys for listening. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section below or to shoot me an email or write me on Seesaw. I look forward to hearing what you guys think. Until next time, bye guys.